a game like Skyrim. I bought Dead Island expecting a game like Borderlands, and it is very much like Borderlands. And that's,
Yeah,
I
just kind of
think
running from one place to another and killing stuff.
yeah, I think that's what's interesting about the topic that Will had suggested for the show today: open world RPGs, how they're becoming so all over the place. Is that they're in all kinds of different genres, like Borderlands and Dead Island and Skyrim and Infamous. Of course, I think it all kind of started with Grand Theft Auto 3, where it's kind of an open world in a game that's not an RPG. But then Borderlands and Dead Island, they very much are RPGs. You level up, level up your weapons, you upgrade your weapons, you repair your weapons. You go from mission to mission. I'm not sure what all makes an RPG, but Borderlands is definitely like an RPG.
James, actually, I got him to play a little bit of Borderlands. James has never been a big fan of first-person shooters, but I wanted him to try Borderlands, and he did mention something about it being different from a regular first-person shooter.
No, I mean, basically what I had said is it's like somebody tried to... You know what it would take to make Borderlands a game that I would play the living hell out of? There's only one thing that didn't make Borderlands appealing to me, but could have made Borderlands an amazingly epic game to where I could look past all the shooting, which is, like I said, my least favorite part because I'm not a shooter player at all, but to where I'd even play it and it would engross me, is just make that shit an MMO.
Yeah.
It had all the trappings, it had everything, it had, colored loot, it had everything it needed, it had all the groundwork. I mean, there were certain bosses and things that were already designed to basically be raid bosses where you had to have 4 people and everything else like that. They could have went that tiny, given by the foundation they had laid, a tiny amount of effort and turned that into an MMO, and I'd be playing it right now.
Yeah, I think Borderlands 2 definitely needs to be an MMO. I mean, if you want to be a sequel and you want to raise the bar, it basically was a 4-player MMO. It just wasn't more than 4 players.
Yeah, and the problem was when you weren't playing with 4 players, they would scale the boss's difficulty down so that you wouldn't need the 4 players in order to do it. The enemies actually scaled based on how many people you had, so my brother and I could easily beat the entire game, just him and me. We were so overpowered by the end of it that it was no challenge at all. The main thing is that you have to have all 4 of the people playing in order for it to become a challenge. And if they made it an MMO, then they wouldn't have to scale the enemies and bosses like that. They could just make them all the same level and make it so that depending on your level in the game, you could fight them at a certain point. That's another big thing about open world RPGs is a lot of them can easily be converted to MMOs. Unless your world changes drastically whenever you do something.
I think none of them easier than Borderlands. Like, I'm sorry, I think it'd be a million times easier to turn Borderlands into an MMO than it would be something like Skyrim. I mean,
yeah, Skyrim is a
all
little
the
bit different. But I'm just thinking of something like Dead Island could actually very easily become an MMO as well. Except there's no real crowning bosses. You mostly just fight bosses as regular enemies as you progress through the game. So there's no real boss status at that point. But you could definitely make boss creatures, like really big bad zombies, and turn them into bosses. A lot of open world RPGs can very easily become MMOs in the future. Or even if they put in that little bit of extra effort, like you were saying with Borderlands, is that they could very easily make them into MMOs, like that.
Because, I mean, to be honest, my basic definition of Borderlands. Borderlands is the World of Warcraft shooter, non-MMO. And I can't say that about any other game.
Yeah.
Borderlands is Warcraft the shooter, ex-MMO.
Yeah, and Dead Island and Borderlands are very much like the same genre, except the one is melee and the other is shooter.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know, I don't follow the news that well, but does anyone know any details on Borderlands 2?
I actually, my brother gave me the Game Informer with Borderlands 2 on it, and it sounds like it's going to be just as ridiculous and corny as the original Borderlands, but they're going to add in some more stuff. Like, they talked about one of the 4 new classes, because apparently the 4 original classes are going to become NPCs in Borderlands 2, so that they can flesh out their storyline and kind of make them their own standalone players. Make them their own standalone characters. The person that you play as in Borderlands is very vague, and there's very little personality surrounding them. All you really get out of their personality is a lot of one-liners and their favorite weapon.
Sounds like they're one step away from making it MMO. They make the stars of the first game NPCs. And then they give you a generic character, which of course you can customize, become your own character.
Yeah. Well, the new character that they talked about was someone called the Gunzerker, who apparently for his his special thing, he gets to dual wield 2 weapons of whatever type he wants, which they were saying has implications of becoming overpowered. But if it's anything like the original Borderlands, it got to the point where the Berserker's fists were infinitely stronger than any weapon in the game ever was, especially rocket launchers. You sit there and shoot something in the face with a rocket and it barely does any damage, so you switch to an SMG and just spam headshots on it. And so dual-wielding rocket launchers is not going to be very effective as opposed to just punching something with your fists.
Yep.
It was really, the scaling in the original Borderlands was pretty bad about that. So they were saying that it could possibly be an overpowered class by giving them 2 weapons of any type they wanted to dual wield as their special, and I really don't see it if it's anything like the original. Sorry, that's off on a completely different tangent, isn't it? I read about Borderlands 2, and it's supposed to be mostly just the same as the original Borderlands, just different storyline, hopefully more fleshed out characters, and overall just not nearly as grating as the original Borderlands was.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations, Will managed to somehow jump down a rabbit hole all by himself.
Are you kidding me? I had a conversation with myself on Facebook earlier. It was pretty fun.
I pushed Will down the rabbit hole.
You nudged him. He jumped. You showed him the rabbit hole. You showed him. He jumped head first.